Target practice. That's how a new headline in the National Rifle Association's official magazine reads. The words in bold text. What's next to it is interesting. Next to it is a picture of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, and it's sparking outrage, to say the least. Ms. Giffords was shot in the head in Tucson back in 2011, has been an advocate for gun violence survivors ever since. This leading critics to call the headline tone deaf. But a father who lost his daughter in the Parkland school shooting, Fred Guttenberg, says the headline was intentional. The NRA did not respond to NBC's requests for comments. The NRA says it's facing financial crisis since 2018, and to get more money, it needs to draw attention to itself somehow. Joining me now is Democratic strategist and chair of California's Democratic Party Women's Caucus, Christine Pelosi. Christine, the NRA is a very large organization with millions of followers. Your mother has received threats before. I feel like it's got a different tinge to it when you see the NRA suggesting. It seems obvious to see that this is what they were suggesting, that your mother, Gabby Giffords, are involved in gun target practice.
Well, Ali, I think what's so appalling and outrageous about the ad is that the NRA would publish that, not only aimed at the Speaker and Gabby Giffords, but also to do so a year after Congressman Steve Scalise, a Republican, was shot and targeted by somebody who was going after Republicans, whose life was saved, by the way, by the Capitol Police, who had background checks and training, which is what H.R. 8, the bill that Lucy McBath and others are lifting up, is all about.
Let's talk about H.R. 8. It is a bill to do with background checks. This is actually the part of guns in this country on which there is massive agreement. Most people, I mean, somewhere upward of 85–90% of people agree that we can strengthen background checks. This isn't complicated.
It's not complicated. What it says is that we should, whether you buy a gun at a store or through a private purchase or at a gun show, that you undergo a basic background check so that the authorities can determine whether or not you have the right to purchase that gun. Perhaps there's a red flag. As a former domestic violence prosecutor, I saw those all the time. A domestic violence conviction, perhaps a restraining order against a loved one, or obviously, you wouldn't want to run afoul of the ex-con with the gun statutes that are in all of our states and territories. So the fact of the matter is you have the NRA deliberately inciting violence against women, violence against the Speaker of the House, a former Congresswoman who herself was nearly assassinated when her constituents died at that event. And instead of doing that, they should join with survivors of gun violence like Lucy McBath, the Congresswoman whose son Jordan Davis was murdered 7 years ago, and instead pass this background checks legislation to make us all safer.
Right. And while we know that's not likely to happen, short of that, what does success look like to you? Does the NRA, what should they be doing at this point? Do they need to say something about this ad?
They do. They need to pull down this magazine. Steve Scalise should be the first person out there condemning them. He knows, as Democrats and Republicans all know, that these kind of ads that incite violence, they fall on stable and unstable ears alike. And why would we want to be turning an argument about whether or not you should get a background check into targeting Democratic women? It seems like if you're going to be the NRA and you're going to be advocating for gun ownership, you should at least act as though you can be a responsible gun owner yourself. NRA members agree with us on background checks. So the NRA ought to listen to its members and not the gun manufacturers. And instead of marketing to fear and violence, they should instead insist on background checks so that every gun owner has been checked for any red flags that might be out there and can get the background check and the training necessary to operate what is a very dangerous weapon.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.